Hi, today I wanted to talk about a couple of our new NAS, which is the TS-464 and the TS-664. Largely the same device, and one is just 4-bay, one is 6-bay, slightly larger. This uses a new CPU, it's got some faster LAN ports, it's got M.2 SSD caching options and PCIe expandability as well. So we'll jump straight into the different features between the two. Toward the end, I will talk about some drives that we're using in this unit. So I've got some very large drives that were sent to us for use in this video. So here we're talking about the CPU. So it's got the brand new Intel CPU. This is the Jasper Lake series. Integrated GPU that supports both 4K H.264 and 265 transcoding. So you can also use the 4K output from the HDMI port that's on the rear. And this is a 4-core, 4-thread that bursts all the way up to 2.9 gigahertz, so nice and fast, very low power consumption. With the M.2 SSDs, we've done the design a little differently than on some of our NAS. Absolutely no screws to get at the M.2 SSD slots at all. You simply remove the 4 or 6 drives, depending which unit you've gone for, and you can see the 2 M.2 slots just inside the unit there. Very easy to access, and the M.2 SSDs are held down with small clips, so if you've ever installed RAM, it's exactly the same process as those. Put them in at a 45-degree angle, press down on the opposite end to the connector, and the little clip will grab hold of it and hold it in place. Now, we're showing it today with M.2 SSDs installed in them, but you can put anything in them that would work with the NAS with M.2. So we do also have the Edge TPU, which is a AI acceleration device that you can use in those M.2 slots as well if you wish. So very versatile, you can use it for anything. And you can also see there the RAM as well. So if you ever did want to change the RAM in the device, the RAM slots are right there if you remove the 4 drives as well. So we'll have a look at the front of the devices. So largely the same, one's just a bit wider than the other. At the top front you've got the power button, and at the bottom you've got the USB One Touch copy button, which is programmable depending on what you need that button to do. It's got a 10 gig USB 3.2 Gen 2 port and some status and information lights for the different drive bays, status of the NAS, things like that. If we look around the back of the NAS, so really the only difference between the two is one has 2 fans, one has a single fan. They're very large fans, so we can spin them very, very slowly, keep it nice and quiet, get a lot of airflow moving with almost no noise. Around the back you see a matching USB 3.2 Gen 2 port, the red one at the top. Just above that you've got the PCIe Gen 3x2 slot, so you can use some pretty good cards in there for some extra acceleration, faster Ethernet, things like that. Some extra SSD, lots of different options you can use those for. You get the HDMI 2.0 ports as well as a pair of USB 2 ports. The USB 2 port's really good for any peripherals or accessories you might want to use, such as keyboards and mice, to interact with virtual machines or the hybrid destination output of the HDMI interface. No need for them to be fast ports for that type of thing, so you've got just a couple of lower speed ports there for peripherals. There's also a Kensington lock, 2 2.5 gig LAN ports, and you've got the power input jack there on the back, so the external power supply, keep the heat outside. It looks a little different on the 6-bay to the 4-bay, so on the 4-bay it's a barrel jack. On the 6-bay it's got 4 pins that connect in, just because the larger unit does use a bit more power, so we've gone with a different power delivery method there. So here's a performance test that was done. So this was tested with the smaller unit, the TS-464. So when we were testing this with both 2.5 gig LAN ports bonded together, we were able to get just over 591 megabytes a second on the read and 589 megabytes per second on the write. So if you can pause it there if you want to have a look at how the test was performed. If you wanted to repeat these yourself, you can see the metrics we use there for that. Now, because we do have a PCIe slot, there's lots of different options you can put in there. Here's just a few that we've highlighted. So we've got a couple of 10 gig options, either dual port or single port. For 10 base T, you can use SFP Plus there as well. And we've got some 5 gig, 2.5 gig options, so different either single port or multi-port options that you can use in there. So lots of accessories you can add in there if you want more bandwidth in and out of the NAS. Now, as standard, it is shipped with a 3-year warranty. You can buy an optional warranty pack for these NAS. It would be the LW-NAS-Peach-2 year. 2Y, and that will up you to a 5-year warranty total. So giving you a nice peace of mind there with a full 5-year warranty. And talking with if you were to do the upgrade of a 5-year warranty, that sort of moves us into the drives. So we do have some 22 terabyte WD Red Pro drives in these. These are from their NAS series. So anything with a red from WD would be a NAS optimized drive. So here's some bullet points for you to talk about them. But these do have a 5-year warranty as well. So it'd be good to pair a 5-year warranty on the NAS with the 5-year warranty that the drives have as well. So they do have the NASware 3.0 technology, which just really optimizes the drives for use in a NAS. And they also have larger NAS bay shock protection. So if you are using a larger NAS, so we do have 24 bay very large NAS as well, it really helps sort of keep the drive healthy for a lot longer in those environments with lots of units with lots of vibration going through it. So it's got a multi-axis shock sensor, so it automatically detects any subtle shocks, so that it can adjust the drive as needed to keep everything healthy. So here's some more features of the drive. So 3D Active Balance Plus is really good, just improves the overall drive performance and reliability. Extended drive testing, so they will work in pretty much every NAS. We've got the WD Red, Red Plus, Red Pro series. We certify them on almost every NAS that we have, as well as their SSD range as well. But because they've now launched the 22 terabyte, even in the small 4-bay unit that I'm going to show you today, you can get some absolutely epic capacity in even a very small unit these days. So the 22 terabyte drive really gives you a lot of options to have a lot of storage in a smaller device. There's no need to go with massive NAS. It wasn't so long that a few years ago you'd need a very large rack unit to even hit the capacity of one of these drives. But doing 22 terabyte with a single one and then putting 4 of them inside one small NAS device, you're going to get some absolutely mega capacity here. So now I'll jump straight into setting up the NAS. So I'll do a full setup from factory default. All I've done is install the drives. I put 4 of the 22 terabyte drives in. I've got a couple of the WD Red SSDs in there as well. And so we're going to go through the full setup here, then I powered it on. So here I'm just going to go through the full setup wizard. We'll skip the boring bits where you just got to sit and wait, so you don't have to. So I'm going to click Start the Smart Installation. The first thing I'm going to do is check for an update on the firmware. I should be on the latest. Yep, it's confirmed that. So I'm all happy there to just click Next and go with the current version that I have installed. So now we go into a bit of personalization with the device. So the first thing I'm going to do is enter a NAS name. So I'm just going to say TS-464. Go with the username I always use, just my name. Go with the password that I like to use for the test NAS. Type that in. Now you've got to remember these, because these are what you're going to log in with once this process is finished. This is your admin credentials. There is no default username and password on a QNAP. When you go through the setup wizard, it asks you to create them. You can't go through that step without creating a new one, and we don't let you type obvious things like admin for a username, for example. You've got to type in something a bit more secure. This is just setting the time zone, so as I'm in the UK, I'm going to leave it as it's detected, and I'm going to synchronize with the automatically provided NTP time server there. I'm fine with that. Click Next. I'm using Optane automatically because I'm not using the NAS for a specific purpose, but if you were, and you might need to do port forward rules or anything to it, it might be recommended to use the static IP address. Just a summary of all the settings. I'm happy with those, so I'm just going to click Apply. I'm going to click Initialize here because I'm happy that it's going to erase these drives, no problem at all. So click Initialize on that, and it's going to go through the process now, setting everything up. I'll come back as soon as this is finished, so we'll speed this bit up for you so that you don't have to sit through it. Okay, so now we're at the normal login screen that you'd be at for the NAS. So this is where I'm going to log in with the username and password that I created during the main setup wizard. So I'm going to click Login, not save the password, get into the main screen. So we're going to be met with a few things down here. So we've got some pop-ups here just telling us some different options that you can use to enable. We'll address those in a minute. The first thing I'm going to do is set up the storage though. So I'm going to click onto Storage and Snapshots. Here there's a small wizard just giving you some information about the differences between snapshots, volume, storage pools, different items, the different disks. You can read through this by clicking Next. I'm just going to close it for now. Just an agreement to agree to. I'm just going to say no there. and now it's going to look at the main NAS screen. So here's the overview of the storage. Now right now it looks a bit blank because there are no volumes and no pools, so we'll address that in a moment. The first thing we'll go look at is the disks. So in this I do have two M.2 SSDs, so they've come up as the WD Red SN700s. They're 500 gig SSDs, and I've got a pair of those. I'll use those for an SSD cache a bit later on. And then the main star of the show here is the brand new 22 terabyte disk. These are the WD Red Pro. So 22 terabyte disks, and I've got 4 of those inside this NAS. So I'm going to create an absolutely huge storage pool with those. So to create a storage pool, I'm going to go to storage/snapshots. Now you can choose to do a new pool or a new volume. I prefer the storage pool simply because it gives you a few more options for different flexible options, as well as using snapshots. So I'm going to click onto new storage pool. So here it's going to give me some options to enable Q-tiering and talking about thick and thin volumes. I'm not going to use Q-tier on this setup. I'm just going to use the SSDs for an SSD cache later on. I don't need the automatic tiering between hard drives and SSDs. I'd rather use an SSD cache for this setup. So I'm going to click next. So now it wants to know which drives to pick. So I'm going to pick everything except the M.2 SSD. So if I scroll down, I can pick disk 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now for the video to be a bit faster, rather than going with the pre-selected option of RAID 5, I am going to change it to RAID 0, just simply because the setup's a bit faster here. I would recommend that you wouldn't do that option. I would recommend that you would go with something else like RAID 5, RAID 6, RAID 10, something like that, depending on the NAS and how many disks you have. So with the 4 disks there, I'm going to click Next. I'm going to turn off the alert threshold on the pool. I prefer it on the volumes myself, so I'm going to turn that off there, and I'm fine with all the other default settings that's set. Just a little summary screen here, just asking the different options. I'm happy with all that, so we're going to click Create. Just a little warning that everything's going to be erased off those disks. I'm sure I want to continue. So this will take just a couple of minutes to set up the storage pool. So it told me there that it's going to be an 80 terabyte storage pool with those 22 terabyte disks there. So that's going to take a few minutes to set up, and once it's done that, it should prompt me if I want to do a new volume. Now while it's doing that, we'll have a look at these different options that popped up down the side. So to access these, you can click the notice board, and it's going to give you a more full explanation of each one, and each one is clickable, so you can go through. There's a get started option asking you to create a storage space, which we're going to do in a minute. That'll change to a tick soon. We're going to create a QNAP ID, so that would be important if you had any licenses you wanted to apply to the QNAP, or perhaps set up remote access to the QNAP. You can set a security policy, so you can pick how secure you want the QNAP to be, and then it will prompt you if there's any bits missing from that security policy. So let's say you choose a more advanced security policy. Perhaps you haven't changed your password requirements to be a bit stronger, so it will tell you that you need to change that setting. So before we go explain the rest of them, I can see here it's saying storage pool 1 creation is complete. So would you like to create a new volume, which I'm happy to do. So I'm going to say new volume. Here you can change the volume type, thick, thin, or static. There's different explanations as the difference there. I'm going to go with thick for this one, but you can choose whichever one you want. So I'm happy to have that one. So in storage pool 1, I'm going to click next. Now it wants how big do I want the first storage pool or volume to be. So here I'm going to just say for the first one with the system data, I'll maybe make it small. Let's go to the gigabyte option, and I'll say let's make this 500 gigabytes. So I'm happy with that. Now down here, this is where the alert threshold is. I'm happy for it to be here on the volume, so I'm going to leave that. If you wanted to enable encryption, you'd do that here as well, and you can choose to enable a snapshot schedule if you want. I'm not going to do that on the main volume. I'll do that on a data volume a bit later on, so I'll untick that one. Click next. So here's the different options that you've got. Are you happy with all of those? I'm happy, so I'm going to click finish. So this will take a few minutes to create the volume. So it does a few things here. It creates the volume, it formats the volume, it creates a couple of default shares that we need for the apps to live in and some other data to live in. Once it's done all that, we'll be able to come back and check for any updates on the NAS, customize it more, add our own shares that we want to use, hide the default shares if you want to, and set up things like the SSD cache. So we'll just wait for this to complete. This will take a couple of minutes. So what we'll do now is we'll look back at the notice board, and we can see that now we've chosen to create a volume. We've got a tick in one of those steps. So as you go through, you can wait till you've got green ticks on everything, and when you're happy that it's got all of them, you can just click the little X at the top, and it will get rid of that from the list. So if you were happy you've done everything in a step, you can close it. Little explanation here about Help Center. So I'll close that one. I don't need to see that. You can enable two-step verification. Now all of these are clickable. So for example, this enable two-step verification, if I was to click that, it takes me straight to the setting to enable it if I wanted to. So they're not just informational items, they actually guide you to go straight to the settings. So one click and you can go fix the error or the change, or make the change that you need to. So I'm just going to close that. I'm not enabling two-step right now. Letting you know you can enable multimedia playback and thumbnail generation. I'm not going to do that personally right now, so I'll click OK. Now the update is available in App Center. It's not letting me close that one because I've not completed that step, so I have to update the apps. I'll wait to do that after the volume says ready over here. So right now it still says it's creating some things and it's not ready. So when it shows up like the storage pool there with a green tick and ready, I'll probably do that one. And it's letting me know that it's already formatted the volume of data vol1, so now it's creating folders. So that's fine. I can dismiss that one for now. So now we'll just wait for the main volume here to say ready, and then we'll go about some extra steps that we want to do, like updating the apps and enabling things like the SSD cache. So I'll come back as soon as that's ready. Okay, so we can see that the main system volume is all ready now, so now we can go on with our extra steps. So the first thing I think I'll do is create a SSD cache. So I'm going to go down here to the next option in the list, which is called Cache Acceleration. So here I'm going to click the big blue plus symbol, so I'll click that, just an introduction about the cache. Click Next. I'm going to select the two M.2 SSDs that are there, so I can just tick the top box because they're the only two available disk. Everything else is grayed out. Now by default it's selected read-only at RAID 0. So with read-only it's fine to be RAID 0 because the SSDs are never the only place where the data lives. If the SSDs were to have an issue, it's never going to lose any data using that. So what I would recommend though is using read and write. If you are sending data both to and from your NAS, it would be better to have read and write. And you'll see that the default RAID type has changed to RAID 1. Now while you can select RAID 0, I would recommend keeping it on RAID 1 because there is a time when you're copying data into the NAS, for example, or editing data on the NAS, that if you were to click save or copy an item in, the hard drives are going to take just a quick second to catch up with the SSDs because the SSDs are so much faster that there is a potential for data loss. So that's why we would recommend having RAID 1 just in case one of your SSDs does develop a problem. So with read write, I'll leave it on RAID 1 and click Next. So here it's asking about over provisioning. There's an information pop out here, so it lets you know whether or not the manufacturer of the SSD needs the over provisioning option or not. So we do have a test tool available in the App Center that lets you test your SSDs first to let you know where to set that. It's called the SSD profiling tool, so you can click that and it will basically test your SSDs and you can pick what performance profile you're happy for your cache to be. And you can set that up. I'm just going to leave it on the default of 10 for now. These are good SSDs, so a low number is usually okay on those. So here in the cache mode, you've got a couple of options. So random I/O really just accelerates the data that really needs helping. So the really small transactional workloads, they're going to be accelerated with random I/O, and you get to choose which block size and under is going to be helped by the SSD. So if you're doing large files and you have it set to 1 meg, it's really not going to touch the SSD cache. It's going to go straight to the hard drive layer. And you can tune this to wherever you need to. Now that box will go grayed out when you select all I/O. So basically everything you send to and from the NAS with all I/O will be accelerated. So in this case, I'm just going to select all I/O and click Next. Right now I've only got the one volume, so that's the only one it's offering me to SSD accelerate. As you create new volumes, there'll be a box enabled next to them that chooses whether or not you do SSD accelerate them or not. Some people may think, why not accelerate everything? In some cases, I don't accelerate some volumes. So for example, when I set up our QVR Pro or QVR Elite software on my NAS to record my cameras, I usually put that in a separate volume and I deselect it from my SSD cache. Because the cameras are constantly sending data 24/7 from multiple cameras, pretty much the entire cache will go toward the camera recording items, which really doesn't need to be in a cache. So I keep that on a volume that is not cache accelerated, just as an example of a use case that I do. So I'm happy with data vol 1 to have that, so I'm going to click next. So it's just confirming these two SSDs are going to be in a RAID 1, and I'm going to have a 450 gig SSD cache total, but because I've over provisioned, it's going to be 406 gigs, and I'm accelerating all I/O, which I'm fine with. Going to click OK. I understand, just a little warning explanation of different things that are going to happen. I'm going to click OK. So that's going to set that up in the background, initialize it. So soon this will say on, and it'll all be ready, and then it'll be accelerating any data I send in or out of the NAS. So some other steps you can do. So we can see there's a few more notifications up here in the notice board. So the malware remover was installed, just a default app. It's been added to the desktop, that's fine. And it's also telling me that the malware remover has run its first scan and the scan has been completed. No problems, so I'm going to close that one out. Now it's saying update is available in App Center. So as this NAS is online, I have got it connected to my router. It's gone off and detected that 4 of the apps do need an update. So now you can update each one individually. So when you click on an item, for example, you can go here and it'll ask you, do you want to go see the changelog for that item? And it shows you all the release notes for a specific app. So it just lets you know anything that was a problem that was fixed or anything that was added. So that's one way to find that. If you don't need that information, you can just click update all at the top. It will skip that step. So when you click update all, it says, are you sure you want to continue? I'm absolutely sure. So it'll go off and it'll do all the apps. It'll automatically download the app and start installing them. So it'll download them all at once, but it'll only install one at a time. So we can see here that the license center was the first one. So that'll zip through. It'll jump down to the bottom section of just an installed app that doesn't need an update, and then it'll move on to the next one. So really easy to do that. And if you wanted to add any other apps while it's doing this, you can come to the All Apps section and have a look at all the different apps available. The QTS Essentials, so these are apps we think you should explore, ones we've picked out that could be quite interesting for you to use. Recommended ones, so things like McAfee Antivirus, some different options there that you can use. And we've also subcategorized everything down the bottom, so you can go through and have a look. And because this NAS does support the HDMI output, there is a separate section here called Hybrid Desk Station. So here you've got to agree to this. And then over here you've got all the different apps that might be available for multimedia output. So all these apps here are available for the HDMI output. So you can install any of these if you want to. And if you've got your QNAP hooked up with HDMI to a display, you'll be able to interact with these apps there as well. Okay, so we'll close that. We can see the SSD cache is on. Everything's happy. It's starting to use the SSD cache just while it was installing the apps generally in the background there probably. So we can see that the write percentage went up to 100% because the NAS was doing something, writing new apps that it's updating. So that's really a full overview of the NAS. Again, sort of the star of the show here, apart from the TS-464 itself, are the drives that we're using. So these absolutely colossal 22 terabyte WD Red Pro drives. Thank you very much to WD for sending those out. So we'll be putting those through their paces. If anybody has any questions at all about this NAS, about the drives, anything like that, please do let us know in the comments section down below, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks a lot. Bye.